Welcome to the Joyful Nourishment Podcast, a place for conversations around all things food, eating, body image and nourishment. Here we'll explore and unpack all the things that gets in the way of us having a kind, compassionate relationship with food and eating in our bodies, and also how we can find our way back to joyful nourishment in our everyday lives. I'm your host, Linn, a registered nutrition therapist and body image coach based in the west of Ireland, and I am so glad that you're here. So it's really happening. The Joyful Nourishment Podcast Season 1 is starting on the 25th of August 2023, and I have lined up 10 episodes for you to listen to centered around food, eating, our relationship with food, and with my guests who I had some really exciting and lovely conversations with. We talked a lot about, in different ways, how moving away from dieting and towards a more peaceful, intuitive eating relationship with food can really help, but also the difficulties that come with that, both from a professional angle, but also personally. And I think I wanted to talk about that for season 1 because I think it is something where a lot of us find ourselves. We live in diet culture land. We're going to talk a bit about what diet culture is as part of this season as well. But it's so hard. It is so hard to kind of feel like giving up the control and the illusion of control that dieting gives us, even when we know and when we can feel that it's not working the way we are wanting it to, or it stopped working the way we were hoping for it to do, or any of those things. And it's our relationship with food has maybe become quite chaotic and overwhelming and all-consuming as one part of this picture. So I'm looking forward to sharing more of this with you as we are going through the first season. And I suppose this whole project is something that I have been really excited to do. I've wanted to do it for quite a while, but joining Substack and growing my community and audience over there has made this quite easy to finally take the leap and put this out in the world. And I'm so glad that you're part of it. The Joyful Nourishment Podcast is available to listen to on all major podcast platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever else you get your podcast from. And I suppose I would want to encourage you to subscribe either on my Substack, a newsletter, or to any of the podcast platforms where you were listening to podcasts from, so that you don't miss an episode. And it also really would help this podcast get some support from the get-go, which I much appreciate. Yeah, what else do I want to say here? I suppose a little teaser that my very first episode that is releasing on the 25th is a bit about my own story from struggling with food and eating and how I became a nutritionist and how my nutrition practice has evolved into a weight-inclusive practice, which it wasn't always. So I think, hopefully that will be helpful. Anyway, so make sure you tune in to the first live season 1 episode on the 25th of August. Thank you for listening to Joyful Nourishment. This podcast is produced solely by me with no financial backing, and your support means a lot to keep this project going. If this episode has been helpful in any way, it really helps this podcast to help others if you click like, subscribe, or leave a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to this podcast on. And of course, you can also subscribe so that you won't miss any future episodes. Find out more about what I do in my private practice and what I offer over on straightforwardnutrition.com. And I am currently taking on new clients, so you will find a link to book in for a free 30-minute session in the show notes if this is something you're interested in. And finally, please come and join the Joyful Nourishment community over on Substack by subscribing to my newsletter.